this feels really weird. We're on the penultimate episode of Scum Villain's self-saving system, the donghua. It feels weird because I'm just getting started. What? We were talking in the Discord today, and I was like, it does feel weird. It feels very bizarre to be on the penultimate episode of the series when I know I still have 4 novels to get through, and we're doing that the week after next. We're starting that journey. And it also feels weird because this is like the shortest donghua series I've watched so far. I mean, Link Click has had 2 seasons, and Heaven Official's Blessing has had 2 seasons, and Modazushi had 3 seasons, and there's OVAs, and so it feels weird to get to like 10 episodes in and you know you've just gotten started, and then it's like, okay, read the novels now. What? Which is probably how you all feel going into the novels after the donghua as well. I wish there were more seasons of this. I honestly, the animation's fine. I like the animation. I feel like, look, there are some moments where you could say it's kind of goofy and wonky, the CGI, but I've watched animated shows that are 2D that have those same moments. Like, you can pause a screen and like pick out a little thumbnail of a person's weird face and be like, oh, look how silly that looks. You can do that with a lot of anime and a lot of donghua that's animated. So I don't think the CGI is that bad at all. I feel like, honestly, Liu and Lo and Shen's faces are animated really good. Everybody else kind of suffers because of it, but who cares about them? I'm gonna be honest. Liu and Lo and Shen are like the characters I'm caring about right now, and everybody else is like, oh yeah, you're here too, but more of those 3. So, and maybe when I get to the novel, my opinions will change. But I am excited. It's the penultimate episode. Last week was great. We got lots of lovey-dovey Shen and Lo moments, and our Shen could not be more oblivious, and Lo is like getting a little bit Pancake was talking in the Discord, and I agree with Pancake that Lo's attitude is a little bit more sassy, a little bit more mature. Like they feel like, you know, they've come into their own, they're feeling their oats. And they were wondering if, because they're reading the same time I am, they're like watching the novel watching the donghua in real time with me, and they're going to be reading the novel with me as well, so they don't know anything that I don't know. But they were wondering if maybe the timelines were matching up, that Lo coming into his own and getting more confident would line up with the original series right before he falls into the pit. And I think that that's true. I just think that in the original, whenever Lo falls into the pit, he crawls himself out, you know, Batman after Bane style, and is like, I'm gonna get you and put you in a pickle jar, Shen. And here, I think he's gonna crawl his way out and be like, I'm gonna make him love me, or like something like that. I don't know, but I don't know. I feel like there's still so much that could happen that we just don't know about. There's a lot of factors we just can't predict yet. I do know that this episode is like 30 seconds shorter than the last episode, which is not fair. At least it's not like Heaven Official's Blessing, where like one episode's 20 minutes and one episode's 17, and it's just like, at least it's consistent, right? I've got a few comments here from Anime Annie talking about how Shen being, I really like this concept that we see Shen being a dork and panicking and being absolutely an oblivious peacock. But then when he presents himself in front of Lo, he's this strong, confident, in control, you know, leader of his clan. And then you have Lo, who is secretly very empathetic and is secretly like harboring all these feelings, but he's coming across, you know, just kind of like, oh, I don't know, but he's actually smarter than he looks. And I thought Anime Annie brought up a good point that, ironically, Lo says to Nightmare, he's like, well, I know Shen. No, he doesn't. He doesn't know Shen at all. He thinks he knows Shen, but he does not. And so it's like, the crazy thing is, Shen thinks he knows how Lo is because he's read the novel, but he doesn't realize the impact he's had on Lo and what that has done and how significant it is. Lo thinks he knows Shen, but he really doesn't. And so I'm going to be very curious to see as we go through the novel if eventually the 2 of them are going to have to come to terms and kind of be honest with one another about how they are. I think that's going to be the crux of their relationship is, you know, Shen's going to have to open up and be like, I'm kind of this dork. I'm not this person you think I am. And Lo's going to be like, you think that I have these feelings, but they've been changed because of you. And so I'm sure that MXTX is going to make that like a thing. We just got to get to it. But I think that's so fascinating, and I'm really excited to see it. So we need to dive into this episode real quick. I want to thank our patrons over on Patreon, specifically in the philanthropy tier. They definitely support me each and every week, like the patrons do overall, and like YouTube subscribers do as well. But the philanthropy tier go a little bit above and beyond, and I'm super appreciative of it. So I want to give them a special shout out in this video. So a special thanks to Alex Cornejo, to Anime Annie, to Be Happy, to Dana, to Destiny Marie, to Danger Zone, to Eric, to Kiri, to Lyndon, to Elfreya, to Boo Boo, as well as Matthew Palfinier, to Shimoyama, to Sunspots, to Nameless Monster, to Nicholas, to Murphew, as well as to Inlee 2 and Danny Donmai, as well as Danavain as well. Thank you all so very much for all your support. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. Yeah, I'm ready, I guess. There's no point in me being sad because we only have 2 episodes left, because I'm about to read the novel and dive into it and bring out Whiteboard Kun, possibly Conspiracy Board Sama, and just dive into that madness. So what can we do? But we're going to start episode 9 of Scum Villain's Self-Saving System. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do it to it, Lars. I do not think it is fair that they stopped this episode. They're only like, I tell myself they're 19 minutes, but then when we start this episode, we're already like almost to the 2-minute mark, and then we end at 16. So these episodes are only like 16 minutes long. It is not fair. It is not fair at all. So this episode's interesting. I think next episode they're gonna end on Lo going down the cliff. I think that he's gonna fall down the cliff next episode. I guess. I don't know. The thing that's kind of weird is I don't know if he's gonna fall down the cliff, because it's like we have next episode. There's not been any like geographical locations that look like the abyss, but yet I feel like we're gonna go there. I don't know. It's weird. There were several moments in this episode that felt like certain things in the OG timeline should have happened and they've already been altered, which is kind of interesting because there were certain things that the system did, but it's been altered, and it's very, very curious. So I'm very intrigued to know how the novel is gonna like spin this out, right? And what we're gonna do with it. I'm very curious. So yeah, let's talk about this episode. The one thing I was going to bring up from Odazushi, it's not really much of a spoiler because it's like an integral part of the series itself and the mechanics of the world building, is just they do night hunts, which is like cultivation hunts for monsters. It very much is like this. And this was giving me a lot of vibes where I could see where MXTX took this concept of like a night hunt and expanded on it in Modazushi. And so I was like, oh, that's kind of cool seeing like the prototype of it. I like the portal, and also there's like a distance shortening array in Heaven Official's Blessing that kind of functions like a portal. So I like seeing like these little elements that you can see being played out in later novels that are shown here. So Shen's just having the time of his life. Shen is just having a great time. He's sitting up there. He's like, I already know what's going to happen. I know the story. I know how this song and dance goes. Now I just have to sit here and wait until it's time to go to the abyss. And it's like, meanwhile, I'm like, Shen, you don't know what your man is doing. I'm like, what? Come on now. So let's talk about this. Alterations in the novel of the OG versus now, right? Because here's the thing. In the OG version, I feel like Shen was plotting to kill Lo, and possibly could have had it in with the people that released the monsters. We don't know. But in this one, he knows that Lo has plot armor. In this version, Shen's like, oh, Lo's gonna be fine. He's not gonna die at all. He's gonna be perfectly fine in this. So he's not concerned. So instead, he's just sitting up there being like, twiddling his thumbs, being like, well, what do we do now? How do I should I get in on this betting thing? Can I make some money while I'm here? Like, he just is having a great time. I'm gonna call the one lady, whatever her name is, I'm gonna call her Nymphia Wind, because she looks like Nymphia Wind. I know Nymphia Wind is Taiwanese, but her hairdo and everything looks sort of like Nymphia win an episode of Drag Race. So I'm going to call her that. But she's interesting. She gives me kind of like, what if Madame Yu was like less Karen-y from Modazushi? It kind of gives me that vibe because there's a character in Modazushi called Madame Yu who is also dressed in purple. Give these women the purple. But she's a lot bitchier than this woman. But this woman seems like getting down to business. She's placing all her money on Liu to get first place. Liu Mingyan. Oh, Mingyan. Okay. To get first place. And I'm like, okay, so that's her girl that's in the desert, right? With the light purple. I think that's right. Yeah. And so I like that the one doctor's keeping tabs of how much money everyone bids. When she first said Liu, I thought she was talking about our boy Liu, who's like, we'll talk about him in a second, just conveniently in the background. But no, she was talking about Mingyan, who is the girl in the purple, right? With the veil. I think that's who she's talking about. There's a lot of characters that have very similar names in this story that it's going to be hard to keep track of. But we'll just go with it. Then we have Ming Yu, who is the doctor who's taking bets. So Gongji Zhao is the one that everybody's betting on, right? So in the OG version, Gongyi Zhao is all bets on for the most part. And in this one, Shen puts Lo against him. So that's going to be interesting. Again, I don't really know what Gong Yi's point is in the story yet, other than he's just kind of there and is competition for Lo, but I don't know where his storyline is going to go. I don't recall him being mentioned in the OG version in the beginning, so it's going to be interesting. He kind of reminds me of Liu, and I don't know if MXTX is making it to where there are two kind of rivalries. There's Shen and Liu, and maybe there's Gong Yi and Lo. I don't know if that's what MXTX is going for. And I say rivalries, like Liu is on to Shen. Liu knows something's up. He's like, you're acting weird. You're not acting like yourself. You're kind of into Lo, but didn't you hate him? What's going on? And so he kind of has this sort of rival energy next to Shen. And Gong Yi kind of has the same type of energy, but I don't really consider Gong Yi and Liu rivals. They don't give off those vibes. They're just kind of like, sup, bro? Yeah, bro. So, but then you could argue that with Liu and Shen too. So, I don't know. Well, it'll be interesting to see where this goes. And Shen places his bets. I like they have the one guy that just names the no-name disciple, and they kind of make fun of him. Like, it makes fun of, like, oh, you just say this no-name NPC, like, that's not even relevant to the story. Watch them be, like, the most relevant person by the end. Watch that. But then they're like, oh, well, I'm just encouraging my disciple. So he kind of illustrates the guy with the fish, the Pisces belt. He kind of is encouraging this behavior, being like, oh, well, I just want to support my disciple. So that's why I'm betting on him. Which the other guys, if you look at the animation on the two guys beside them, they have like the, girl, you're supporting your disciple? Girl, you got a crush on him. And then what happens immediately after? Shen puts 5,000 stones on Lo, and everybody's like, what does that mean? So it's like, we just had it illustrated by the guy with the fish belt. Like, that is exactly what Shen is doing. He's like, oh, 50, put him in the top 10. I'll put Gongji as number 1, 600 soul stones. And then Shen's like, oh, everybody's betting on Gong Yi. And you guys bet on one person only. And then she looks over to Shen being like, who are you going to bet on? And he's like, I bet on Lo. 5,000 soul stones. I just love Lo's animation, or Shen's animation in this whole episode. There was moments where I wasn't paying attention to anyone else in the episode except for Shen. Lo looks really good too. Lo has some really good animation as well, but Shen is like perfection. The only one that could draw my attention away from Shen is Liu. Liu is so intense. His animation is just like, Liu's energy is like a cat that's like trying not to get thrown into a bathtub full of water. That is Liu's. It's like that, you know, like if you're about to like jump into a cold lake and your body clenches up, Liu has that energy on 24/7. He's just clenched constantly, like I'm going to erupt. And I'm like, please do so. But he bets 5,000 stones, our boy Shen does, on Lo. 5,000 stones. And they're like, who's he? Who's Lo? That's a lot. And then meanwhile, the dare officer, you over here, he's just like, what are you doing, Shen? What are you betting all this money? What? Here's the thing. What I love about this is Liu's not supposed to be there. Liu's not supposed to be there at all. In the OG, Liu is dead. He ain't there. He's not in the storyline at this point at all. So everything he does and says at this point is creating a butterfly effect that's changing the story. Whether Shen is smart enough to realize it or not, Liu's presence is completely disrupting the narrative. So here, Liu is kind of the one that questions Shen, right? And he's also the one that suggests them going to face the monsters, which Shen gets on board with for reasons we're going to talk about, but still, like, his presence is completely changing the story. And I like how he's conveniently tucked behind Clan Master Yu. He's conveniently tucked behind him, like you aren't supposed to know that he's there, because you aren't. He's not originally supposed to be there. It's like a glitch in the system, right? But I just love how he slowly, like that ponytail, he's like, oh, I'm just having fun, and I'm trying to encourage being heh. Like, Shen's like, I'm just having fun and encouraging my disciple, you know? And that's when Liu, like, slowly comes into view. Every time Shen talks about flirting or, like, obliviously flirting with Lo, it's like Liu slowly, casually comes into view, and he's like, what's going on? I love when he just fades into view. He's just like, oh, having fun? I can't tell you how I am loving Liu's presence in the donghua. I don't know if it'll have that same effect in the novel, but just seeing the way they animate him and seeing him just be like, really? He's just like donghua Squidward over here. And he's like, you probably can't collect 1,000 soul stones from all the people at your peak. What shade? What tea? This bitch could win a reading challenge. He could, like, put the glasses on and read Shen for filth. Like, just, I freaking love Liu. He's one of my favorites because he just speaks such atrocity shade. Yes. And then Shen's like, just shut up, Liu. You don't know me. I live for their dynamic. I live for Liu just pestering the shit out of Shen and giving him all the grief because he deserves it, because he's an oblivious peacock. But yes, he's not supposed to be there. He doesn't even go here. And here he is. And Shen's like, well, my disciple won't lose. And everybody's like, I like the one doctor's like, I don't know, this doesn't make any sense. 5,000 soul stones is quite a bit. What if he can't pay that much when he loses? Nobody's ever placed that big of a bet before, eh? And I like that you, our clan member there, is like, he's like, oh, well, there's no need to argue about it. We'll just accept it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong. I thought at the very beginning that you would be very suspicious because he's this figure of authority, and MXTX has trained me to not trust figures of authority. But another part of me now is like, is you just like a big dumb teddy bear? And he's just pretty harmless, and he's just there, and it's just like, well, yes. Is that all he is? I don't know. I'm not fully trusting of him, but he's like, well, we'll just go along with it. I don't know. His eyes are also soulless. I'm sorry. Like Liu, Shen, Lo, even like all the girl characters, even Ming Fan, all of them, like there's a little bit of soul in their eyes. The commander, like clan leader Yu, there's just like a black soulless quality to his eyes, and he just like there's like nothing going on inside. It's like the lights are on but nobody's home. That is the vibe the animation on him gives. I don't know if that's intentional, but that's what ends up happening. Also want to note, and this is just a comparison to a character named Mu Qing in Heaven Official's Blessing, Liu's ponytail is giving a lot of Mu Qing coded energy. I'm just saying. And then they're like, Clan Master, are you paying? And he's like, sure. Who will pay if he loses? He's like, I'll pay if he loses. I like that Shen's casually like, I got a sugar daddy. Yes. And I didn't even have to do anything to get it. I like that. Yeah, that's so weird that Yu's like, oh, I'll pay up if he loses. And Shen's like, I can bet all the money. I don't have to suffer any consequences. Surprisingly, the Scum villain self-saving system did not activate once in this episode, which was weird to me. I figured that it should. And he's like, well, who can keep the winnings? And he's like, you. And Shen's like, oh, this is just working out in my favor. How about that, right? How about that? I think that's very interesting. He's like, oh, thank you, Senior Yu. And then I like that the one woman's like, that is some bias, like, that he has towards you. So that's kind of interesting. So in the OG, you it's kind of the same thing, I guess, in the OG as it is in this version. You fronts and supports Shen. I am a bit curious about that because you as the clan leader, so I'm going to be curious to see, like, we know that in the OG version, Shen ends up in the pickle jar. So, like, did Lo kill you in the original one? Because you would think that you would support him. I'm very curious about this. Again, Liu is in the background not doing much because he's not originally supposed to be there. And then they add to the bet, and then they keep betting on Gongji. All of them do. And he's like, oh, forgive me for causing a scene. I'm like, you literally did nothing, sir. You're fine. Meanwhile, back in the woods, we have our party, like, trying to find shelter for the moment. Now, there's a lot that happens with Lo that I think you can discern from the OG version and see how it's changing in this. So, for example, I feel like they make a commentary later on that Lo gathers. He gathers all, like, the clans to his side. He, like, wins them over. And I think that has to do with his personality and how in the OG version, once he, like, started going down the path to take over all three realms, he's a natural born leader and he gets everybody to follow him. And we saw that kind of hinted at in the last episode where he was practicing and he managed to get, like, all of Ming Fan's followers to come over to his side. So I feel like that part is about the same as the OG. The difference is, in the OG, I'm pretty sure these two girls were, like, trying to win him over, and they're like, oh man, we're really hurting, Lo, and we're really hungry. Can't we go on? And, you know, aren't you going to support us and all this? I feel like in this episode, there were a lot of moments where the one girl, Wan Rong's sister, was, like, trying to flirt with him. And in the OG version, it works. And he, like, she becomes part of his harem and he, like, wins her over and is just like, yes, Casanova. In this, he's so focused on doing things for the glory of his master, for Shen, that he just ignores her. And it's just like these moments that could be romantic. He's like, yeah, that's cool. You can follow behind me, I guess. I've got to really help Shen and win this tournament for my master. I don't really have time for you all. Whereas in the OG, he probably did. Because here's the thing. In the OG, Lo was, you know, had Drakes started from the bottom, constantly playing in his ear every 5 seconds, and was trying to constantly build his way up, getting followers, doing all this, and Shen was trying to bring him down. Here, since that's not the case, Lo has the opportunity to try and do this for Shen. And Shen's just letting this go without realizing what's going on. So it's like, and we'll talk about that whole thing with the harem. So, like, I'm sorry I'm troubling you. And he's like, how can I be the top of the rankings with these people dragging me down? So this is interesting because in the original, I don't know in the OG version if Lo's goal was to be in the top of the rankings for any other reason other than becoming, like, to help foster his transition to being the ruler of all three realms. Here, he's doing it for Shen. So there is a moment with this where Lo's personality being like, all these people are dragging me down. They're just in my way. I'm like, you can kind of see a little bit of edge to his personality here where you could easily see how Lo would probably maybe sacrifice these people because they're not helping him accomplish his goal for the glory of his master Shen. So I like that we have a little bit with Lo's personality, and you can kind of see how if he was just nudged a certain direction, how he could fall into the dark side. I could definitely see it. But he ends up not. He's like, how did this bunch of pampered disciples get registered? Well, it's called nepotism, and it's a thing. But her and her sister, I'm like, I like that they keep calling him a gentleman handsome, even though he's making them walk more. Like, he's not even, like, you know, treating them any more special, but they, like, flirt with him and treat him because he's the protagonist. They're like, he's the protagonist, of course. And then they look up to him and they're like, what do they say about him? They say, Wan Rong, we've been troubling Senior Lo for a long time. He's protected us all the while. We need to think of him. Like, because he's the protagonist. They want to think of him and, like, get on his good side, which eventually leads them to become in the harem. And they're like, I want to rest. And eventually she gets Lo. She's like, oh, well, since you're so nice, I'm sure you won't mind us resting for a while. And Lo says, sure. But he says it in the most, like, least sexual, not interested, platonic way possible. Like, he's not even halfway looking at her. He's just like, yeah, okay, we can stop. I feel like this is a very different tone than the original novel took. And they're like, oh, good, we get to stop. Yay. Meanwhile, he's like, I'm going to bring glory to my master, who's placing bets on him because he knows the outcome of the story, and he's being a dirty, rotten scoundrel. Lo thinks so highly of Shen, and he's such a dorky scoundrel in this episode. He's like, what is this feeling? I know how it will end already, but I still feel nervous. Like parents waiting for the children outside the exam hall. I'm like, comparing Lo to his kid, I'm like, come on, Shen. It also is kind of funny because Shen knows the outcome of all this, of this story, or he thinks he knows the outcome. Here's the thing, too. Shen thinks he knows what's going to happen, but we have established the last several episodes that there's all these butterfly effects that are possibly going to have the story go a different direction than Shen predicts, and we can't quite say that that's how it's going to end up, so... But they keep following this tally of who's going to win. I don't trust the old man. We know in the OG that the old man that's in charge of the whole tournament or whatever, in the OG, we know that Lo kills him. He kills him and takes the daughter into his harem. We know that, which, okay. The question is going to be, is he going to kill the old man in this version or not? That's going to be a question. Like, how is this going to change from the OG version? That's the question that remains, that we have to ask ourselves. And they're like, well, who's most likely to win? And they think it's Gong Yi, whom this old man seemingly trained. And they're like, that Lo being he's really leading all these people from different clans together. It's really uncommon. He's a natural born leader. And I do think it's kind of cool how he's like standing above everybody and like looking down, kind of like a leader of three realms. Like there's so much vibes here that I'm like, yeah, this is connecting to Lo in the OG series that becomes this demon lord. It's all like the foundation is being laid here, right? He has potential to be a good leader. And Shen's like, oh, there's Wan Yu and Wan Rong. And he's like, both of them will be in his future harem. And I hate that he smiles and he nods. He goes, they're going to be in his harem. Look at him. That kid acts so fast. I'm like, there is nothing more frustrating than Shen not realizing that Lo doesn't care about those girls. Could not care about them less. He is just caring about you. What is wrong with you, Shen? Why can't you figure this out? Why are you okay with this? And for me, right now, you know, Shen can't get hurt emotionally because he doesn't realize he likes Lo. My question is, when is it going to turn? And I know it's not going to happen this season. It's going to happen in the novel. But I'm waiting for the moment that Shen realizes that Lo likes him and that Shen realizes he likes Lo. And then what do we do with that? I'm waiting for that moment. And because right now Shen is just like, yes. The heterosexual agenda is just going along swimmingly. Look at him getting all them girls together. What a great guy. And I'm just waiting for the realization to hit. And it's going to be glorious when it happens. It's probably going to be hilarious when it happens. But it's just so frustrating right now watching Shen be like, look at him getting all them ladies together. And it's like he doesn't care at all about them. Like, like, come on, Shen, get it together. But he looks, he's animated so well in that moment. Anyway, he's like, but their rankings, he's like, he has 1 point. What are the rest of them doing? Yeah, so right now he's like losing. There's a bunch of them, but they're not doing anything. And they're like, wow, Shen, your disciple is great. And they're just kind of mocking him. He's like, I've said great potential to be a good leader. You're overpraising him. And Shen's just like, I like that Shen's like, just you wait, you bitches. You don't even know what's coming in the plot. But Lo still has to prove himself. Anyway, I like that we cut over. We have clan leader Yu just looks like a Buzz Lightyear action figure. Liu looks interesting. And then, of course, our woman in purple, she's just like, oh my god, this is awful. You should have bet 5,000 stones on Ming Yang. And he's like, don't borrow from me if you lose. And he's like, well, the results don't matter. At least he is kind and sincere. Oh my god, like clan leader Yu is just like, he's like a little wind-up doll that you press a thing and he says like an inspirational phrase. He clearly seems like an NPC that's just there to sprout goodwill. Now, whether or not that betrays us later on, I don't know. But he seems like he's just furthering advancing the plot, right? And Shen's like, don't worry, this disciple of mine won't lose. I love that he has the fan and he's just sitting there fanning himself nonstop throughout this. It was great. He's like, what does he say there? He's like, if he does, he won't lose. If he doesn't get in the top 10, I will expel him from the clan. They look alike. So much alike. Interesting. So, does this old man know, like, Lo? Is he related to Nightmare, or does he know who Lo looks like? Interesting. Like, he brings up that Lo looks like somebody he knows, but we don't know who. I'm curious. I'm curious indeed. And maybe in the OG version, the old man also gets Shen to, like, go after Lo. But here in this version, maybe Shen is going to protect Lo from him, or try to, and maybe in the process of Shen trying to protect Lo from the old man, he gets hurt, and then Lo's like, oh, you hurt my master, I'm gonna kill you now. Maybe that's what happens. I don't know. I'm like, I don't think we're gonna find out anything next episode. I think it's gonna be 16 minutes leading us up to the abyss, and nothing's gonna happen, and we're gonna have to watch in the novel. I can't believe we only have one episode left. So anyway, Lo, like, they drink all the water, and they manage to get to this spring, right? As soon as they started, like, to go drink from the water, I'm like, I wouldn't do that. That sounds nasty. You don't know what fish have peed in that water. I guess if you're thirsty enough, it doesn't matter. But then they're, like, swashing their feet around it. And I like that they spit the water out when they see the girls, like, splashing their feet. And I'm like, do you know what kind of fish and stuff have pooped in that water? And you're worried about some girls' feet? What? No. Also, they should have found a hot tub. Would have been better on their feet. Eases the pain. So yeah, in any case, the one girl's like up there on the rock pouting, looking depressed. And she looks over, she's like, oh, I'm staying up here. And Lo's like, okay, everyone be careful. I feel like everything about this scene with the two of them up there by themselves, like Wan Yu and Lo, was supposed to be like this pseudo romantic moment of them talking and like getting to know each other, and like Lo like telling his backstory and like relating to her, and the sisters down there clearing her feet and they're having this conversation. But Lo's so focused on helping to impress Shen, he's not paying attention to her. So the storyline's getting thrown out of whack, right? And he tells them that they need to get out of there before dark. Anyway, we then cut to the desert where Ming Yan, who I think that's who she is, she looks like the pink Power Ranger, is fighting Mortal Kombat style. I love her outfit. I love her design. She looks really, really pretty. I love she has the sword and the veil. Looks great. And she's chasing these wonderfully animated monsters. I will admit, the worst animation of this entire season are the monsters in this forest. They're pretty bad. The ones that look like a Resident Evil game from PlayStation 1 in 1997, the one that has a little like praying mantis arms, those are probably the most egregious. The monsters here are okay. The half moon serpent looks really cool. I like the animation of it, but the little like side monsters, and then they have that like birdemic bird that's like caca. It's ridiculous. I will say there is a scene in Heaven Official's Blessing that takes place in a desert that involves characters getting bitten that I thought this was, you know, inspiration for. But they talk about the no cure. So the no cure has affected this one person, interestingly enough. I'm not sure where we're going to go with that, but it's good to note. Then we cut to Gong Yi, who sees a serpent. Gong Yi is interesting. He looks very much like Liu a little bit, and how serious and intense he is. But I don't know. I feel like Ming Yang's going to be a big player in all this. I feel like Gong Yi is going to be a player in all this. I don't know to what extent, though, or what they're going to do with Lo and Shen. I'm so curious. But they're kind of the two outliers that are like the ones that are expected to win this competition. But she's being plagued, literally, by the no cure, and Gong Yi has to fight these serpents. So I'm curious how that's going to go down. I'm very curious to see what these chapters are going to end up, because I don't think we're going to have it solved in this. Meanwhile, I like that Ming Yang goes like the pew pew pew, like the little fireworks that go out. That was funny. And then Gong Yi is just like, oh, what is this? He's animated really well. I like the close-ups on him. They look great. Meanwhile, we have everybody realizing that they're all getting attacked. And they're like, what did they say there? Yep, they're all getting attacked in the moonlight by all these monsters that were not expected. And then there's these like vultures that are killing the spirit hawks, which was not expected at all either. So something is amiss. Something is rotten in the state of Denmark. Something seems like it was, you know, set up. Now, in the OG, here's what I wonder. I wonder because Shen knows how this story goes. He knows how this song and dance ends up. He knows what the root cause of it is. I feel like maybe the old man in the OG version, maybe the old man was mad that Lo was getting all these people following him, and he was afraid that he'd show up Gong Yi. So maybe he set it up to where everybody but Gong Yi would be taken out. And in the old OG version, Shen's character doesn't like Lo and wants to kill him. So he's like, yes, let's team up together and get this all taken care of and try to kill Lo. But Lo manages to save himself and keep everybody safe. So in the OG version, Shen's character, who's a villain, mind you, decides to go to the world to handle the situation, and he ends up kicking Lo into the abyss. I feel like that's what they're setting up. I feel like, except Liu mentions it and suggests it instead of the others, I feel like they're setting up that Shen and the old man and them are going to have to go in to the portal to solve the monster problem, and it's going to lead Shen and Lo to the abyss, where Lo gets kicked down, and then his whole quest for revenge is kind of set off by that. Now, whether or not that ends up happening by Shen's hands or not, whether it goes that way or not, I don't know. We're going to find out maybe next episode, but they definitely make note that there's some creatures there that should not be there to begin with. They're far more dangerous than they need to be. We'll be honest too, these like upside down Stranger Things monsters coming out of the water were terrifying. Like with the open splay mouth and everything, they were creepy as F. No, absolutely not. And I can't believe that they killed the one sister. Cannot believe they killed the sister. That was insane. They killed her, and then yeah. So in that moment, let me get that here. He like goes up. What happens in this moment? The sister is going up. She reaches for the one sister. And then as the snake monster is killing him, he tries to like, Lo tries to fire at the snake monsters. The one sister goes up to try to grab her hand. I'm like, come on, girl. You just got your feet soaked. You can do it. But no, it ends up the snake monster, while Lo is trying to stop them with his swords, his sunlight swords. I love it. The snake monster comes up, completely takes her. And as she's trying to pull her up, that's when the snake monster gets her. Yep. It's kind of awful. I hate that this thing goes up and grabs her. And I like how they had, like, on the other side of the portal, they had, you know, like a instant replay of her getting eaten. And I was like, that seems really insensitive to all of them. But this moment here, where she, like, reaches for the sister, loses her, the monster drags her back down, and as she's crying, she's about to go after her to, like, kill herself, and Lo grabs her, spins her back around, and catches her. Now, in the OG version, I think that's the moment that she fell in love with him. That was supposed to be an OG love moment between Wan Yu and Lo. That was supposed to be a moment that they fell in love, was he saved her life after losing her sister. The camera spun around, the music played, but in this version, they're just platonic friends. Because Lo has no interest in her. He saves her, and she's like, oh, okay, and then she cries and everything. And he, like, comforts her, but that's pretty much it. He's like, it's a 7-star, like, Argon, and he pushes her out of the way and tells her to go hide, and then goes to fight the creature. And that's pretty much it. So so far, these girls in the story that Lo has encountered, rather than having romantic moments with any of them, they're just moments where he's nice to them and gives off platonic friend energy. So I'm like, are they all going to become his beards? Are they all going to become like just his lady friends that surround him and support him, but he has no romantic or sexual interest in them? That's what I think. I think, is it going to take 3,000 of them to cope with the fact that he can't get with Shen because Shen's too damn oblivious? Maybe. So I think that's just funny. He does like the Hercules Hydra thing where he slices its head off. I thought for a second he was going to reach through the Hydra and go in and like grab Wong Rong's body from inside, but no, that's not what happens. That's not what happens at all. Instead, he pulls the one sister away and drags her away, being like, don't, you're not going to save her. Let's get out of here. And they all run off. So meanwhile, the council's like, all these monsters are here that aren't supposed to be here. So is this your fault? To like the old man and his daughter. And the daughter's like, this isn't our fault these monsters are here. Why? Our own people are there. Why would we put our own people at risk to make a scene? I don't know. I haven't decided whether or not I trust the old man and his daughter yet. I don't know if I trust them or if I think that they did intentionally do this. I like that the lady, that the old Nymphia Wind here, as the girl's like, why would we put our own harm our own people and put them in danger? She like gives them a look like, really? Tell me then, what's going on? And she's like, well, how would I know? And then the old man's like, we'll open up the barrier and rescue them. And they're like, we'll open up the barrier. And then Liu says no. Or no, Yu says no. It's like, if we open up the barrier, all the monsters could get out. And we don't want to do that. Like, why do you disagree? Do we want our disciples to die in there? And he's like, no, if we open the barrier. I like that when Shen moves over to talk to the old man, his robes are like billowing, like the air and the movement. Shen can't help but be the most handsome man in this whole series. He can't help that. It's just, it's, you know, for someone that's the villain of the series, he gets all the hunky energy. If we remove the barrier, the monsters will be widespread. What will happen to the normal people living around here? We are immortality pursuers. How can we neglect these people's lives? And everybody's like, okay, yeah, fine. Take the moral high ground. So what do? How do we get our disciples out? And that's when Liu says, we could go in. And they decide to, and he's like, yes. Everyone. I also think that originally Shen posts that idea of them all going in, and just like in the other episode when they were fighting the priestess, Liu took his lines. So I think that those were all things that Shen was going to propose, but Liu took the lines from him, and he's like, son of a bitch. So it's gonna be interesting to see whose head we get in as far as perspective goes for these scenes. Are we going to get into Shen's head about them? Or is it going to be like third person observer? Like, what's that going to be like? He's like, they have to be enacted by somebody who tried to wipe out the talented and capable ones who pursue immortality. The daughter looks a little bit like mad at Shen for saying this. The daughter looks a little bit suspicious. Like she's angry he's suggesting they go in. He's like, the only thing we can do now is keep the barrier up. He's like, and I request everyone to join us entering the valley to bring down the monsters and rescue our disciples. And so the Huanhua Palace is going to join them. The old man and his daughter, of course, they're going to join. And the Tianyi Temple is going to go too. Look at Liu back in the back row, looking handsome and fine as hell. And the Shen's like, all right, count me in. And that's it. That's a damn episode. How dare? How dare? So they're going to keep the barrier up because if they put the barrier down, the monsters can get out. They don't want to do that. They want to go save the disciples. So Shen and Liu and the others are all going to go in there to supposedly rescue everybody. Okay. The question is going to be, what is that going to look like with the Abyss? Are we going to see the Abyss next episode? What are we going to do? Now, before you all ask, the moderators did tell me that there is an after credit scene for episode 10. They told me not to watch it and hear me out because they said it was going to reveal stuff that happens later in the novel. I'm going to get to it. don't you worry. I'm going to get to it in the novel and I will be surprised and we can talk about it then. But I don't want to know about it ahead of time. Nah. So I am going to see the episode next week, watch the OP and the ED after it's done, but I'm not watching the after credits. We're going to wait. We're going to wait and then read it with the novel. So as I am recording this, the council on Discord is figuring out how to separate the chapters of volume 1 because apparently the chapter sets are like 60 pages, which is insane to me. So they're going to help spread that out. So that'll be good. But I'm so excited to see what we end up getting with the OG story versus the new story. I think that's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see how that goes down. But with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed this reaction discussion. I'm curious to know your thoughts down below, but next week's episode 10, y'all. And then we have the novel of Scum Villain's Self-Saving System. So I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please take care, stay safe, and I'll see y'all next week with another episode of SVSSS. Bye!